Hey there guys, so we are looking at the next gen of product releases. We have now gotten the 7000 series launched, reviewed, and released. We are now today getting the reviews for the RTX 4090 Founders Edition. It is just the Founders Edition. It isn't any of the AIBs. Those are going to be coming out tomorrow, but these reviews pretty much just ended up dropping today in the last hour or two. And just going through a bunch of them and seeing what the numbers are looking like, it really looks like the RTX 4090 is, while impressive in terms of the performance gains, it's not looking good in terms of price. It's really not. So with that being the case, then we're going to be going through. Right now we're looking at the mega thread that has all of the reviews for the RTX 4090. We're going to be talking about its numbers. We're going to be talking about its price point. And of course, we are going to be looking at Ryzen 7000 series as well as Intel's Arc, because this is all shaping up the next gen of hardware and it is looking rough. And it's looking rough not in terms of the performance numbers, but it is the price points that are looking really rough, because by what we're looking at so far, it seems like everyone is getting priced out of the market if you yourself are not someone who has fat stacks of cash right now. So going through, we're going to be jumping over to TechSpot, because that is where Hardware Unboxed posts their numbers. Hardware Unboxed and Gamers Nexus being the two channels that I trust the most when it comes to their numbers. They're very thorough, and I really respect both of them. Now going through, of course, we can just see here just pictures of the cards. They're massive, they're ginormous, they're really power hungry, they're kind of ridiculous. Now, what I like about Hardware Unboxed is that they were testing with the Ryzen 7 5800X3D. This being the card that I think, or not the card, but rather the CPU that I think AMD is a little upset that they even ended up releasing, because it has proven to be kind of the champion of this generation, what with the 7000 series being kind of ridiculously priced. But of course, we'll go into that later. Right now, we're looking at the RTX 4090. And right now, going into the benchmark numbers, what you're going to notice as a trend, because I already saw Hardware Unboxed's video and I already watched Gamers Nexus's video. Obviously, I don't have one of these cards. There's no way NVIDIA is going to send me one of these, but we can, look at these videos and see what numbers they have been getting. And by the looks of it, it really seems like this card is just exclusively targeting 4K performance. And that's kind of interesting in the sense that 4K is really a niche thing. It's not exactly something that the vast majority of people are using. Most people aren't going to be using 4K for gaming. Most people are on 1080p to this day, and 1440p is starting to gain some traction, but not a whole lot. So if we go through this right here, we can see 1440p results in a game like Watch Dogs Legion, which, to be fair, who's actually playing this game? Most people are not playing Watch Dogs Legion, but it is good to just be able to see what the performance numbers are like for it. You can see that with Watch Dogs Legion at 1440p, while it is topping the charts, it's not leading by a huge margin. AMD's top-end cards, as well as NVIDIA's top-end cards from the previous generation, are holding up perfectly fine. The gains that we're seeing here are not substantial. It's really just nothing impressive. Now, when we get into 4K, this is where the domination starts to happen. At 4K, you can see here that the RTX 4090 is really flexing its muscle. It's really showing how powerful of card it really is. But the price point is what kills all of this. The price point is just really ridiculous. We're talking about $1,600 so that it can beat a card that you can buy today for $700 to $800. It's just not something that I think most people are going to find to be that impressive, really. I think for the vast majority of people, while the numbers look good, it's the price point that really just prices everybody out. It's just not going to be doable for most people. And of course, this is just Watch Dogs Legion. It's not a game that a lot of people are playing, or really, I would be surprised if their gaming numbers right now are really that substantial. But moving on to other games, something like Rainbow Six Extraction, you can see here 1440p, it is actually showing some nice gains, but look at the FPS numbers that we're getting here. Let's see if we can't zoom in to get a little bit better of an image here. We're talking about an increase to 350 FPS average over the 3090 Ti, which is at 222. Who has a monitor that can really display this anyway? Most of us, if we're doing high refresh rate gaming, we are at 144 hertz. Maybe you have 240. Either way, even if you have a 240 hertz monitor, for most of the time, you are going to be well within that range. Yeah, the 1% lows are going to be below that. But again, are you going to notice this? Are you really going to notice this? Now, this is Rainbow Six Extraction, but it is based off of the same engine as Rainbow Six Siege. So you're going to get similar results around that. And of course, the gains are impressive. They really are. If the 4090 was at the same price point as something like the 3080 Ti, then you could say that this is a monumental gain. But that's not what's going on here. There is no monumental gain in all of this. It's really overall a not that impressive gain because the price point, $1,600, is just way out of the price range for most people. It's just not going to be doable. Now, of course, if we go on to 4K, you could see the lead forward extends. It is impressive, but the price point is not, because what we're seeing is essentially no real price to performance gains. All that has happened is NVIDIA is allowing you to pay more money. And that's it. You are allowed to pay more money for more performance, but there is no price to performance gain. There is no generational improvement like this. And that's pretty significant because that means that more people are getting priced out of this. And this is just looking at the 4090, which based off of the numbers that they've shown, at least in terms of what the hardware is going to be, because once you get the numbers for one card, just going based off of CUDA core count and stuff like that, you can get a rough estimate on how the rest of the performance is going to be for the rest of the stack, because it's all just cut down versions. And it's looking like the 4080 is not going to be that impressive, and especially the lower tier 4080, which is supposed to really be the 4070 that they've just rebranded to a 4080 and are charging you money for. But we'll look at that when the actual numbers for that end up getting released. Right now, of course, going through the numbers that we're getting here, again, 1440p and 1080p are out of the question for this card, which is pretty significant in the sense that, again, most of us are playing at 1080p or 1440p. Most people do not have 4K. If you look at the Steam hardware survey and look at what 4K is at, it's practically non-existent. Most of us are not gaming at 4K. And really, it's out of the price range of most people, because 4K 144 hertz displays, which is what you're going to want, because, I mean, look at the numbers that you're getting in Far Cry 6 in 4K. We are well over 144 hertz average. Are you going to want to buy this card to game at 4K 60? If that's what you want to do, congratulations. You can get yourself a RTX 3070 and do that perfectly fine. Your 1% lows are even going to be within the range of that. So, you know, you got like what, a $500-$600 card at most here, which if you're paying $600 for RTX 3070, congratulations, you just got ripped off in the current market. But, you know, we're talking about like $500 graphics card versus $1,600. If you're at 4K 60, there is going to be no noticeable difference whatsoever. You're already getting the full refresh rate of your monitor. If you have a 4K 144 hertz display, then okay, yeah, you get some benefits here, but you just spent pretty much over $1,000 on a monitor to then spend $1,600 on a new graphics card. Now, maybe you have the disposable income for that. That's perfectly fine. But the vast majority of us don't have that. That's just not how we live, you know. That's not how this goes. The vast majority of people are being priced out of here. And again, 1440p results are not impressive because really you're most of the time CPU limited here. You know, like that's the thing. This is such a generational gain because based off of the Gamers Nexus numbers, they said it was anywhere between a 50 to 80% gain, with some outlier games going all the way up to 120% performance gains over the previous generation. Those are very, very specific scenarios. but in general, the gains are very massive. But it doesn't mean anything when the price increases goes along with that performance gain. So in that situation, there is no point in buying a 4090 unless you have fat stacks of cash that you're just looking to burn right now. And all of this in a situation where we're all going into a global recession right now. People are making less money, the cost of living is going up, and you're expecting people to spend this much on a graphics card. And it'd be one thing if this was just graphics cards, but CPUs are getting more expensive. And we'll go into the 7000 series from AMD after this, but right now, talking about the 4090, the numbers, while they look impressive, they're not in any way, shape, or form going to entice me to upgrade. Keep in mind, this is what I have right here. I have an RTX 3070 Ti. Does perfectly fine. Look, I game at 1440p. I have a 144 hertz monitor. This right here, more than adequate. I am perfectly happy with this. No complaints whatsoever. All of this, while nice, not really necessary. This right here, super impressive. Don't have a monitor for it. Don't want to buy a monitor for it. I don't want to spend that much money on a monitor. I'm perfectly happy with the level of performance that I'm getting here. So what is the point of this then? Because if it was competing in price point, even if this was $1,000, at the level of performance that you're getting here, you can make an argument where it's just like, well, all right. Yeah, maybe it does, because, you can make the argument the RTX 3070 Ti, yeah, it does fine at Hunt Showdown, but Hunt Showdown is not going to be the only game I play for the rest of my life, Maybe in 2 years, games become so demanding that, this card here starts to struggle. It starts to go under 100 FPS. So, there is something to be said about going higher up in terms of performance, but the price point is just so ridiculous. $1,600 for this? I don't know who's doing that. I don't know who that's for. So, of course, if we look at 4K, we can see here at 4K, the numbers are really impressive. But again, price point. It's all about the price point. And it gets ridiculous, especially because, again, you can make the argument, if you're gaming at 4K, you're probably having the kind of money to buy something like this, but it shouldn't be that way, Already, the 3090 Ti, when it launched at its price point, it was ridiculous. And the fact that they're just continuing that with the 4090, which is not even a Ti, it's ridiculous to me. Now, of course, let's try to get to their overall, multi-game result numbers. Really, overall, you're seeing throughout all of these charts, while it's topping everything, it's not leading by such a margin that you would think that the price point is so necessary. It's just not. It's really not necessary levels of performance. One of the most impressive ones being Shadow of the Tomb Raider, actually. It actually had some pretty massive gains on that, especially in those 1% lows. But again, one, a lot of these games, they're one and dones. You know what I mean? Who out here is replaying Shadow of the Tomb Raider? Are people really playing this game that much? Or is this just one of those things where, it's just impressive to look at the results and that's about it? I personally, I've played Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but I've played it once and that's it. I don't plan on going and revisiting it. But we could look at the 13 game average, which is again what Hardware Unboxed ended up doing. They are testing with the 5800X3D, which is pretty much one of the fastest and a lot of the times the fastest gaming CPU you can get in a lot of games. Yeah, pretty much it is the typical NVIDIA scam where they are just charging you a lot of money. But here you can see at the 13 game average that we're seeing here at 1440p, again, it is leading the charts, but not by a significant margin. Ask yourself honestly. Let's say you have the RX 6950 XT there. Are you going to notice a difference getting a 4090 if you're playing at 1440p? What kind of monitor do you have? You more than likely have 1440p, 144 hertz. I don't think you're going to be crying about this level of performance if you have the 6950. So if you go to the 4090, like, okay, you get to flex a screenshot of your FPS number on Reddit or on Twitter. That is the extent of it. That is all it is. You are just flexing this. You're not actually seeing any benefit in terms of your gaming experience. And of course, this is 1440p. You can make the argument that, okay, this card was designed for 4K, but who is gaming at 4K? If you look on Amazon, if you look on Newegg, 4K monitors are not even in the top 20 best-selling monitors. No one is gaming at 4K. The handful of people that are, okay, congratulations, you have a really expensive graphics card that you could pick up and use yourself. That is pretty much the extent of it. And this is, of course, the 1440p results. If we look at the 4K ones, again, the 4K numbers do look really impressive because the card itself actually has a lot more headroom here. But who is gaming at 4K 144 hertz? Go on to Newegg, go on to Amazon, look up what the price point of these cards are, or of these monitors are. They're out of the price range of most people. I mean, just to start fully utilizing this, this graphics card, you're going to be spending anywhere between $800 to $1,000 on a monitor already, just to spend $1,600 on the graphics card to play like it or play with it. It's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And it's unfortunate because this is one of the largest generational gains that we've actually seen in graphics cards in a very long time, pretty much since the 10 series. Because when the 1080 Ti was pretty much one of the biggest gains that we had seen in a good while. And, since then, I mean, generationally speaking, this is some pretty massive gains. But it has so many asterisks with it, because this is at 4K, a resolution that the vast majority of us are not gaming at. This is with a price increase that goes completely along with the performance increase, essentially completely negating any actual gains whatsoever. Like, there has been no generational improvement in terms of price to performance. And I mean, what Steam shows us, and what pretty much every single, anything that tracks best-selling hardware and everything like that, is that the vast majority of people are buying in the mid-range to low-end price point. I mean, the 60 series of any NVIDIA generation is always their best selling. The 3060, the 2060, the 1060, they always end up being the best sellers, So in that situation, who is this for? Who is this for? For the vast majority of people, this is just not going to be doable. And I mean, let's look at the 1080p 13 game average here from Hardware Unboxed. At 1080p, this is a joke. This is a complete joke. And again, you could be saying, well, what is the point of this? Why would anyone buy this card in game at 1080p? Well, if you're someone that frequents a lot of hardware-related subreddits, you'll quickly realize that a lot of people actually end up spending this kind of money for 1080p. People will buy high-end hardware just to get like the maximum FPS that they can at 1080p, but this is just ridiculous at the price point. This is out of the question for most people. Now, going into the results for ray tracing and, of course, DLSS, which DLSS I do think is one of the coolest features that we've ever gotten in terms of PC hardware in a long time, because it is generally an actual game changer, but it does not benefit these types of cards, because really all DLSS does is make lower end cards, more viable, and these high end cards, they don't really benefit as much. Now, the RT gains that we are seeing, of course, with the 4090 are impressive in a lot of games. The RT gains are pretty nice, but tell me, how many RT games are you actually playing out there? I mean, like, RTX and ray tracing in general has been out for long enough now that you would think that there would be at least some killer app games. Now, I have played one ray traced game where I thought, wow, okay, this actually makes a huge difference in the overall atmosphere and experience of playing the game. And that was Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. That's it. That was the last time that I really found it to be impressive or anything like that. Even Cyberpunk with ray tracing, not as impressive. And I think it's just because the overall tech that went along with making Cyberpunk, just in terms of rasterized performance, already looks good enough. Is that a spam bot? Let me get rid of that in the chat real quick. It's crazy that just happened, but all right. But yeah, overall, the RT performance is impressive. Really nice gains, especially over the previous gen, over, you know, especially over what AMD has. I mean, AMD, their next gen needs to do some pretty crazy stuff to really compete here. But at least in terms of like RT performance, but most people aren't using RT. Most games just don't have it yet. You know, it is taking a while for it to catch on. And in general, I mean, like the numbers just don't look great. They just don't look great in terms of price to performance. And I think that that's what the vast majority of people are going to care about, especially as we go into a global recession. Who knows how long we're going to be in a global downturn in terms of the economy. So with that being the case, then, are people going to be dropping this kind of money like this? And you got to ask yourself, okay, why is NVIDIA doing this? Why are they making a card that the vast majority of people are not going to be able to buy, even if they want to buy it? Well, the reason for that really comes down to the fact that NVIDIA has a lot of 3000 series cards on supply. I mean, the reason for that is really just the fact that the mining boom was really profitable for them. They made a lot of money. They made a ridiculous amount of money. So with that being the case, then, since they made so much money, they could not go back to normal pricing, because NVIDIA was making a crap load of money off of the mining boom because they were selling cards directly to miners. That's what was happening. They were, you know, they were selling pallets full of Founders Edition cards to mining firms. So they were themselves scalping their own cards. And they can't go back. You know, they have investors that they need to appease. And because of that, we get shafted because now those price points are coming to us. We have to pay those prices. And it's rough. It's rough overall. You know, because again, impressive RT numbers, but it doesn't really matter if the vast majority of games out there aren't using RT. The games that people are actually playing don't even benefit from all of this, because ask yourself, really, what games are you playing? Most of us are playing what? Fortnite, Valorant, Warzone. You know, like the really, really popular games out there run already perfectly fine on most hardware. You know, features like DLSS, you know, 3.0, I really don't see the benefit too much. I mean, the whole interpolating frames, I'm iffy on, just because, you know, the way the TVs do that already, not really that impressive to me. So in general, not too hyped on that. And now we get to the real crux of the issue here. The power consumption numbers. Let's get this a little bit bigger here, so we can see in a game like Halo at 1440p Ultra, the power consumption that we're seeing is kind of ridiculous. It's not as high as what their, you know, 6950 XT and 3090 Ti are doing here, but this is ridiculous levels of power. This is a space heater. This is heating up your room. You know, because like this right here, this is not a Founders Edition card. I'm almost positive that this is an AIB card, and AIBs kind of tend to throw more power in there to increase their performance numbers over the competition and over the Founders Edition. This is just a Founders Edition card. This is a Founders Edition RTX 4090, which means AIBs are, one, they're not going to be at the $1,600 price point. They're going to be way higher than that. We already know that some of those cards are going to be up to $1,800, $1,900, even $2,000. So already Founders Edition, one of the cheapest cards you're going to be able to find in terms of the 4090 series. AIBs are going to push more power through, and they are going to price higher, because especially now that NVIDIA themselves is their direct competitor, they need to get aggressive if they want to survive in this market. There's a reason EVGA left. EVGA was not going to put up with this. They knew the numbers. They saw where everything was going. They knew that NVIDIA was essentially going to eventually try to phase out the AIB partners, because there is more profit for them to sell directly the cards to you. So with that being the case, then we end up in a situation like this where the power consumption numbers are going to get ridiculous. And this is going to be important because this is directly going to cost you more to run the system. It's going to be using more heat. More heat is just going to heat up your room more. You're going to need better cooling. So now you're going to have to run your AC longer. If you live in a environment that is just naturally hotter and AC is not as commonplace, well, now you have to choose whether you play Fortnite or you have a livable environment in terms of, the temperature. Because if you're somewhere where it's just, in the, I guess most other people use Celsius, but if you're somewhere where, you're getting ambient temperatures that are like, I guess we'll just go with Fahrenheit, like 100 degrees Fahrenheit is just a normal temperature in a lot of places. Hey there, Elite. But if you're in an environment that has that kind of temperature in just the ambient environment, this much wattage being thrown into the air is going to heat up that room really, really quickly, and it's going to become unbearable. If you don't have AC, that's going to be a problem. It's definitely going to be a problem. Now, thankfully, NVIDIA has the solution there, and the solution is you just can't afford the card. Oh, Intel definitely needs to fix their drivers. That's the thing. I have been watching a lot of Linus's videos talking about the ARC cards. I love and I respect Linus a lot. He's been in the game for a very, very long time. I do think that some of those Intel videos that he's been making are a little bit shilly. I get his point, though, and that we do need more competition. The 4090 series is showing us, or the 4090 card is showing us that NVIDIA needs competition. They really do, and I really wish that Intel could bring that competition, but my God, are their drivers still a disaster. They're rough. They are really, really rough. And it sucks because Intel has some features on their cards that I actually really like. Linus recently had a video showing that the encoder on their, ARC graphics cards is actually really nice. It's really impressive in terms of the performance that you get out of that. But the thing is that, like, this whole idea that, the video was focused on, where you could just buy something like the A380 and, use that as your, dedicated encoding card, kind of falls apart when you look at the fact that Intel's integrated graphics have that same encoder. Not the current generation, but the next generation is going to end up having that. They're going to have AV1 built in, and that will do the job. And that is one thing. I think in terms of the next gen stuff that is looking rough is we have ARC just having performance issues because of bad drivers. We have NVIDIA's next gen being pretty rough because of the fact that the price points are just ridiculous. And when it comes to the lower tier, RTX 4080, it's just the 4070 that they rebranded. And with AMD, the issue is that the 7000 series is literally so expensive that none of us should buy it. Especially not just because the CPUs themselves are expensive, but have you seen the prices on their motherboards? The cheapest motherboard is like $200. I think the very, very cheapest is like $180, and that's like an ASRock board that's like pretty cut down. Those are ridiculous prices for a motherboard. Like, wait, are there actually like benchmarks for the RTX 4080? I thought it was just the 4090 that they showed so far. I'm pretty sure that they haven't actually released any RTX 4080 benchmarks videos yet. But yeah, I watched his AV1 video, and like again, I get some of the points that he's making, but I think that AV1, it's not there yet. I mean, YouTube supports it, but Twitch still doesn't. Facebook still doesn't. You know, any of the streaming sites where you would realistically be streaming onto, they don't support it yet. And by the time that they do, Intel's integrated graphics are going to have AV1, and that's the way to go. You know, because like Intel's integrated graphics are actually one of my favorite features of their CPUs. They're really powerful when it comes to their encoder. But yeah, just in terms of the performance numbers that we're seeing out of the 4090, it's impressive levels of performance, but the price point is just so bad. It's just so bad. $1,600 starting off for Founders Edition. Not even an AIB card. Pretty much prices out everybody, especially since we're going into a, global recession. Yeah, the Iris Xe 80EU, while it isn't the most powerful chip, the encoder on it is so good. It really, really is. I remember actually when I had the 1135G7, I should have done a video on it. I really should have actually. But you could stream off of it really well. Really, really well. You hook up a capture card, like a USB capture card to it. You use the built-in encoder for, the encoding of the stream. And you could stream like Switch games. You could stream console games on there perfectly fine. You could stream a whole PC on there. It was a viable thing to pretty much buy from Walmart, like a $300 laptop, and start streaming with it. You just hook up a cheap capture card to it, and you could start streaming on there, and you now have a 2 PC streaming setup for relatively cheap, and it was portable. You could take it with you. It was very flexible. Like, if you have your consoles in the living room, you could pretty much just take that with you over there. Like, overall, it was pretty impressive. I don't know if 13 Gen is actually getting a improved iGPU. I really hope it does. I mean, they need to improve their iGPU for sure, but it might just be that they're really focused on, fixing like their current generation stuff. But at least from what we've seen, because obviously we don't know anything about 13th Gen mobile, but 13th Gen desktop is actually looking really, really impressive, especially compared to 7000 series from AMD. I may actually upgrade to Intel this time around, and that will be probably the first time that I've done that since I think 2016. The last Intel CPU that I used directly on my own system that wasn't used for, like an Unraid machine was the 67, the 6700K, I think is what it was. Yeah, I mean, Cinebench is just one of those benchmarks that in general not too useful, because like unless you're gonna be rendering in Cinema 4D, it really doesn't matter. In terms of gaming performance, which is what all of us are really using these for anyway, they're so comparable. Like for a while now, in terms of CPU performance, we're at the point where there is no bad option. Like if you're on the 5000 series from AMD, there's no reason to upgrade. If you're on like the 11th gen of Intel, there's no reason to upgrade. Even if you're still on 10th gen, there's no reason to upgrade. The performance gains, like, unless you're getting yourself a super high-end graphics card, you're not going to see any gains whatsoever in most situations. Now, there are some outlier situations, and it really just comes down to the fact that specifically the biggest game changer in all of this is the AMD, like the Ryzen 7 5800 X3D. And it's just because it has a fat stack of cache on it. And that cache actually has some pretty impressive performance gains in games that really are cache hungry. Games like Escape from Tarkov are very CPU limited, and the cache increase in that actually has some pretty massive gains compared to 11th generation and stuff like that, or in 12th gen, and like even 7000 series really can't keep up with it. And I would be surprised if 13th gen from Intel can actually keep up. But in general, I mean, for the vast majority of us, CPU performance is already there. You know, it's already to the point where we're more than happy. Like, again, if you're on 10th gen from Intel, I just don't see a reason to upgrade if you have anything that's like below a 3070. You know, and like I would upgrade my graphics card before I ever even thought about upgrading the CPU. CPU performance is where it's at. Like, people like to buy these huge multi-core CPUs for gaming, and like I have a 3900X on my system. You know, it's a 12 core 24 thread, but that's for rendering stuff, you know, like for doing video work. It's not for gaming. For gaming, I have never played a game that has fully utilized all of those cores. That's just, games don't work like that. They'll use at most 6 cores, maybe 8. Outside of that, though, they just don't get utilized like that. So while 13th gen is looking really impressive, especially if you're someone like me that, you know, uses their CPU for video work, if you're just gaming, there's no reason to spend that kind of money on it. Just stay with what you're at. You're more than likely going to be happy. So the biggest downside is just that these next generation of GPUs are looking not great. And the reason I say that is just because of the fact that, you know, NVIDIA, they're showing their numbers first here. They have the first movers advantage because they get to set the price here. Because now the question is AMD going to compete in terms of price point? You know, is their next generation of GPUs actually going to be competitive in terms of price? Because, you know, we look at their numbers all the time. You know, like, if you look at Hardware Unbox's numbers, you look at what their numbers were like for, you know, the 6000 series of GPUs from AMD, and they're competitive, especially at 1440p. Like, I mean, like, it's not that far behind something like a 4090 at 1440p. But in terms of price, they were never aggressively competitive. You know, I mean, now they are. Now that, you know, the market has collapsed, they're the ones that have been reducing prices the most. And honestly, if I was in the market for a GPU right now, I would be looking at a 6800 XT. That's pretty much where I would be shopping at. Because I could go to Micro Center right now, pick up an open boxed one of these for around $550. You know, to get like this level of performance compared to spending $1,600 on this. I don't think that the 1135 G7 really bottlenecks the Iris Xe. I think that the Iris Xe actually bottlenecks the CPU itself. Because, like, I mean, if you look at what the i3 does, which the i3 still to this day is 4 cores, 8 threads. When you pair that with a high-end GPU, it does incredible in pretty much like 90% of the games that people will play. It's just that the Iris Xe is just so weak in comparison to most GPUs that it just holds back most games. Like, there are certain games that will utilize more cores and threads, but for the most part, I think that the 1135 G7 is perfectly fine for most gaming scenarios. Because if you're playing a game like Valorant, playing a game like Dota, like League of Legends, like Counter-Strike, anything like that, more than enough cores. Really, the vast majority of games, they just are not held back by having that many, you know, cores and threads. 4 cores, 8 threads, still fine for most situations. It's just the fact that the Iris Xe has, 1, driver issues, and 2, it's not exactly extremely powerful. For a lot of those games, though, it's still doable. You know, and I mean, I promise you, there are people that are rocking an 1135 G7 right now that could probably destroy a lot of us in games like Valorant, you know? Like, I have an RTX 3070 Ti, and I can promise you while playing Fortnite, I've gotten destroyed by someone that was playing with, like, just a weak little integrated graphics. Because skill is what matters the most, you know? Yeah, I mean, but, like, the GTX 750 is ancient at this point, you know? It's pretty old. It's been around for quite a while. Integrated graphics have, improved pretty significantly. Like I don't think the 1135 G7 is really that bad. It's just held back by the drivers. If Intel could figure out their driver situation, I think a lot of people would be way happier. Way happier. Especially for like certain titles that are just like some of the most popular ones. Like they could fix up those drivers and actually like get some pretty nice performance, make a lot of people happy. But I mean, Intel has a lot of problems when it comes to their overall driver performance. But just in general, the RTX 4090, impressive gains in terms of performance. The price point completely negating all of those gains, making it pretty much buying it kind of irrelevant, kind of just unnecessary, not really something that I would recommend most people do, because in general, it's just not worth it. It's really not. I mean, again, we're going into a recession and you're expecting people to spend minimum $1,600. And that's in the United States, one of the countries that gets some of the best pricing in terms of hardware. Outside of the US, places like Europe, these cards are going to be so expensive that pretty much no one's going to be able to buy them. Like, it's ridiculous, especially with energy costs so expensive over there. It's crazy. I mean, there's people out there that are spending the US equivalent of like 75 cents to $1 per kilowatt hour. I pay 10 cents. Like, European pricing is just so bad in terms of power that like a system that is chugging down 500 to 600 watts just for like the graphics card, kind of crazy. I don't know specifically about that laptop model itself. Pretty much if you don't see it in the BIOS, then the manufacturer is not going to let you unlock it. They're just not. And that's really one of the worst things that we've been seeing in the hardware market in general. That trend of manufacturers locking their CPUs and stuff like that, not really letting you mess with anything. It's extremely annoying. Extremely annoying. Because it makes it so that, like, if I uploaded a video showing the performance in something with the 1135 G7, it might not be representative at all to your hardware because your manufacturer just locked down the CPU to a lower setting that you can't increase. But yeah, I also watched the... Where is it? All right, I watched the Gamers Nexus video on it. Obviously can't watch it here because, YouTube doesn't allow React content. I will get like a content ID kind of thing. I might still get it right now, honestly, but we'll jump ahead and because they talked about transient spikes and stuff like that. Some of the transient spikes weren't as bad as I was actually expecting them to be, but it is still to the point where if you have a lower end, even good quality power supply, but it's just a lower tier one, like in terms of wattage, it can be pretty brutal. Like my system has a 8,500 watt, it's like an EVGA like G2, so it's a gold rated power supply. I could not have this card in there. This card would absolutely destroy my power supply. So, which means that I would have to upgrade my power supply just to be able to have this card in there. Not exactly great, and of course their power consumption results were ridiculous. But looking at just overall the numbers that they were getting at 4K, it looked good, looked impressive. But I just think that for the vast majority of us, it's just going to be completely out of the question. Completely out of the question. Tomb Raider actually being one of the ones that like gave some of the best performance gains compared to like the 3080 or the 3090 Ti and the 6950 XT. But again, who's playing Tomb Raider like this? Like who of us is going this ham in a game like Tomb Raider? At this point, it's been out long enough that you have more than likely played it a crap load of times. Hey, what's up? Wait, what are you saying? 8,500. I have an 850 watt power supply. I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. COVID messed me up. Like, I still have not fully recovered from COVID, but in general, I'm still pretty all right. Yeah, no problem there. But yeah, I have an 850 watt power supply, and a card like this would absolutely destroy it. It really would. Right now, I'm just talking about the RTX 4090 Founders Edition, since the reviews for it have released. Been looking at some of the numbers. Right now, we're looking at Gamers Nexus's video. Obviously, I'm not watching it just because, you know, YouTube would be very, very angry at me if I actually started watching this. But we're just skipping through, looking at some of the charts and stuff like that, looking at the numbers. It's impressive, but the price point is just ridiculous. I mean, 1,600 US dollars is just crazy to me. It's crazy. Now, obviously, right now here you can see these are just 1080p results and stuff like that. So it's a card that you need to have a 4K monitor for. So you need 4K. You need to have 4K. You need to have a 4K monitor that is 144 hertz minimum. And they're pretty much just expecting you to pay for the performance increase. Like, there is no generational improvement here. All that they ended up doing is just saying, you want more performance compared to the 3090 Ti? Then pay us for it and we'll give it to you. It isn't like this is a new generation that's replacing anything. This is just adding on top of what already exists. And again, they're trying to clear out through their like 3000 series stock because of the mining boom. They made a crap load of those cards. They have warehouses full of them, and they're trying to move that stock, which is why they're pricing the 4000 series so expensive. Yeah, they are going full EA. They are pretty much just going to try to squeeze out as much money out of us as possible, and I just don't know who's going to pay for this. I'm certainly not going to be paying for this. I'm not going to buy this card. You know, like it's not for me. It's definitely not for me. And I don't think it's for the vast majority of us because we're going into a global recession. Who has $1,600 to spend on a graphics card? Which, keep in mind, that is before tax. This is before tax. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. But anyways, I need to go use the restroom, so I will be right back. All right, I managed to come back. I'm good to go. Oh my god. Don't even get me started on all that extra crap with the RTX 480 or 4080. The fact that that 12 gigabyte version even exists is ridiculous because that's supposed to be the 4070. Like, that is the most insane thing that I've ever seen NVIDIA do pretty much in my lifetime, where they are so egregiously taking what is supposed to be a lower tier card, what is already a cut down card. Like, they are not comparable at all. Yeah, it was supposed to be the 4070. That's what it is. In any other generation, that would have been a 70 series card, because it is the die that they have been using for that in a probably at this point a long time. Because it used to be that like we would actually get the full fat cards from like NVIDIA. I don't think we're going to be seeing a 4070 or 4060 until sometime maybe mid next year. because they gotta burn through their supply of 30 series or 3000 series cards, and it really seems like that's the approach that they're going with, where it's just like, do you want a cheaper card? Buy the previous gen. It is the most egregious thing that they've pretty much done in forever, really. Like, it's actually insane. Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, I don't know if AMD needs to go that hard, really, for their next gen in terms of GPU. It almost seems like they just need to price it accordingly. They just need proper pricing. They get good pricing, and that's they've already won. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to be a situation of, are you going to get a 4090 that you're going to have to go into debt for, or are you just going to buy yourself an AMD card that has 70 to 80% of the level of performance that you could actually just afford? Because in that situation, it might just be better to go with the one that you can afford, you know? But just in general, what NVIDIA is doing with their, whole 4000 series of cards is crazy, Because the 4090 is the only one that on paper looks even decent in terms of the performance gains. The 4080, the 4080, they're pretty much just doing some ridiculous stuff where there's two tiers of it. They are not the same card at all. One is a cut down version. Is it worth it to buy an ARC GPU? It's hard to recommend. I'm in the same spot as Linus, though. I think Linus got a little bit too shilly with it, where I get the point that he was making. Because if you're a hardware enthusiast, if you're someone that cares about computer hardware, you enjoy this stuff, ARC is interesting because it's new. You get to be part of the process of, actually like improving this stuff. Like, if you're someone that is actually going to write bug reports to Intel and be like, hey, I played this specific game in this specific scenario with this driver version, I ended up having a crash. If you're going to be part of the process of actually trying to help improve the drivers, and that's something that is fun to you, then yeah, if you're a hardware enthusiast, I could see that. But if you just want a graphics card to play games with your friends and have fun, I don't think it's worth it. Yeah, I agree with that. The ARC series is more compatible with software, and then with the gaming side, 100%. It, like, what they actually managed to nail there was just the actual like enthusiast side of things, Like, if you're someone who does productivity work, if you work with video editing, if you work with anything like that, even 3D modeling and stuff like that, their driver support for all of that is actually really good. It's actually really good. Like, to the point where if I didn't use my PC for both gaming and for video editing and video work like that, I would consider getting an ARC GPU, but it would only be for, the productivity stuff. And even then, the thing about it is that the biggest improvement with the ARC GPUs is just the encoder. And that encoder is going to get put onto their iGPUs. So it's just one of those things where it's like, with the integrated graphics of something like 13th gen or 14th gen, you're going to be able to get that encoder on there. You're going to get pretty much most of the benefits on there. And you don't have to lose a PCIe slot to a whole card that is essentially just going to be dedicated for doing work in, productivity programs. Well, I think what Intel is doing more than anything, because overall, I think that ARC is a bit of a disappointment because it was delayed for over a year. Because this was originally supposed to be released in the beginning of the year, where at the end of the year, next gen cards are being announced and released. Meanwhile, NVIDIA's releasing cards that are having trouble even keeping up with last generation. It's having driver problems. In older titles that rely on DirectX 9, it's rough. Really, overall, it's just not Like it's not impressive performance or anything like that. The productivity side of things is impressive, but that's completely based off of the encoder. So in general, not impressive levels of performance or anything like that from ARC. What I am excited for from Intel though is their 13th gen CPUs. That's what I'm really, really excited for. And the reason I'm excited for it is not even for the high end. It's the fact that they actually have a low end. You know, because like, all right, let's go back to the hardware subreddit and look at this right here. AMD's budget B650 motherboards topping out at $450. This is crazy. The cheapest B650 motherboard is $170 for what is their budget chipset, already cut down compared to the higher ones, mid-range boards being anywhere between $200 to $300. It's like these companies don't want us to upgrade to 7000 series from AMD. I mean, like, really, look at these prices. This is ridiculous. Like, my system right now, I have a 3900X paired with a MSI. It was like an X470 Gaming Pro Carbon. I bought that at Micro Center for around $140. That is an X470, you know, like a high-end chipset at the time. $140 for the motherboard. I can't even buy a B series motherboard from AMD at this price point. That's crazy to me. Yeah, I like when it comes to like Intel or AMD's iGPU, they really just need to improve their support and like productivity stuff, because that's what Intel really just kills them on. They do so well on that. But yeah, like, I mean, the price of motherboards alone has made 7000 series just ridiculous. And like, that's not even including the price points of the CPUs themselves. Because again, Intel or AMD is doing the same thing where they're charging $300 for a 6-core CPU. You want to know how much I paid for my 3900X? I paid $320 at Micro Center for a 12-core CPU that I've been using since then. In today's market, I would get half the amount of cores. That is crazy to me. That is crazy. And in today's market, if you try to build with that $300 6-core, you're still going to be paying $160 or $170 for a cut down motherboard. I'm blown away by these price points. I am blown away with these price points. I just don't understand how they can even get away with charging this. Intel's starting price point for their motherboards is already lower. You know, like for their higher end, I forgot what exactly the chipset is supposed to be for the next gen from them, but the lowest price ones are around 170 for the high end chipset. So with that being the case, then Intel seems to be the way to go, especially because they're actually going to have CPUs that are cheaper. You know, because I mean, the truth of the matter is right now is that Intel is super competitive on the low end in terms of CPUs, to the point where I think for the last like year, if you built an Intel system on the low end, you did it because it was the cheaper option and you got pretty much better performance anyway. I think Intel, they need to work more on their DHC drivers. Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is that Intel's, I don't know what Intel's driver team is really like doing. Like, I don't know what they're prioritizing right now, because like, I mean, like, here's the thing. ARC is impressive to you and me. You know, it's impressive to us because we want more, you know, competitive GPUs like that. It's not something that matters to OEMs. It doesn't matter to laptop manufacturers. What they care about is iGPUs. iGPUs sell like crazy to those types of companies. They sell ridiculous amounts of iGPUs. So I think their focus should be on improving their iGPU performance. I think that that's what should be number one priority for them. But I understand if they're focusing on their dedicated graphics cards just because they want to enter the market and they want to be as aggressive as possible. They sell as many iGPUs as they do is because like it's just easier for companies to buy like that. You know, like because one, systems with iGPUs are more power efficient because you don't have a whole graphics card essentially eating up power, because even at idle, a graphics card eats up, you know, some pretty decent power. Oh, you watched the Minecraft video? Yeah, I'm actually working on another one of those. What do you mean I'm making you bored? What does that even mean? Well, you could go watch something else. You know, like you don't gotta like chill here or other things to do. But yeah, just in general, like I think that Intel is just the way to go when it comes to the just budget stuff. You know? Which is crazy to think because Intel pretty much just switched from being the expensive brand to the budget friendly one, you know? And like in general, like their iGPUs are just extremely popular. Extremely popular. They sell a crap load of them. You know, like they are like they dominate the budget market. They really do. They sell iGPUs like crazy. They have a crap load of them. And like their product stacked with iGPUs is pretty much like, if you go onto Steam's hardware survey, you'll see that they actually, you know, just sell crap loads of iGPUs. They are like the most popular. Why would I answer your question at all, honestly? But anyways, yeah, their stuff is just their iGPUs are just like the most popular ones in the world. If you look at the Steam hardware survey, they actually dominate in terms of the GPU numbers. They are 100% like the most popular in terms of iGPUs. So it would make sense to me for Intel to just focus on, you know, fixing all of that before they do anything else. I mean, yeah, you might be. Who knows? I do have like a lot of Indian viewers, you know, which makes sense because, you know, like I mostly focus on iGPUs and the budget side of things because to me, that's what's the most important, honestly, you know, and that's what like disappoints me the most about looking at like all of the next gen stuff. Because it's all just targeting like really high end users, you know? And like that's like the most disappointing thing, you know? Oh yeah, here's that Linus video for the AV1 decoding. Which like again, I get the point that he's making. I really do. AV1 is really impressive. I would like to actually just be able to stream with it, get better quality and all of that stuff. It does look nice, but I don't know if I would buy an A380 for it, you know? I don't know if I would actually do this because one, you're losing a PCIe slot to this. You know, you're losing a whole slot to this. And again, the iGPUs that Intel are going to be releasing with AV1 decoders and encoders are going to do exactly what you want this to do, but it's built into the CPU. It is a really good video. It is a really good video. And if like, I don't know if you've seen the EPOS Vox video about it, where he goes into more detail about it. I watched that one also, and it was impressive, but I'm waiting for the iGPUs, really. Because I think the iGPUs is going to be the most interesting thing. Yeah, I saw his video talking about it. Epos Fox's video for it was great, fantastic, loved it. But really, just overall, I think it's still too early. NVINC is pretty much just the equivalent for NVIDIA. It's just like their built-in encoder, which I use NVINC for streaming and for like recording videos. It works really well, especially like the thing is that like the AV1 encoder and the encoder on like, you know, the ARC GPUs in general is only impressive in streaming situations. Because if you're recording, like if you're looking to record, not even just like if you're looking to stream, then yes, okay, this is impressive. But if you're looking to record, then NVINC, AMD's built-in encoder, or even just CPU recording and all of that is just going to be like impressive enough. Right now, with what is available on the market for the vast majority of people, NVINC is just the way to go. Like NVINC is just like it has like the widest amount of support, widest amount of compatibility. It performs really, really well. In general, because like the thing is like it depends on where you're going to be streaming onto. If you're streaming onto Twitch, they only support H.264. You can't even stream with H.265. You can't use AV1. So if you're looking to stream on Twitch, then you're not going to be able to do it. If you're going to be streaming onto Facebook, same thing. Although I don't know if Facebook actually supports H.265. I haven't looked because like I don't watch Facebook streams or anything like that. But YouTube does actually support AV1. Yeah, Twitch does not support AV1, but just in general, like Facebook, I don't know if they like support anything outside of H.264. They might support H.265, but they definitely don't support AV1. I think YouTube currently is the only one that supports AV1. And I mean, AV1 is really impressive. It really is. It is impressive, but just in general, I think most of us aren't going to need that right now. And by the time that it becomes relevant, iGPUs are going to support it. The new generations of graphics cards are going to support it. See, that's how I feel about it. Who streams to Facebook, right? But if you look at some of those Facebook streaming numbers, they're crazy, dude. There are some people in like the Philippines that will stream to like 100,000 people and they're on Facebook. I have no idea who is actually watching Facebook streams because I mean, here in the United States, nobody watches like that. But I mean, there are just like some massive Facebook streamers out there. It blows my mind. It really, really blows my mind how like big Facebook is outside of the US. And obviously it's not like everywhere, but some countries it's massive, dude. It is massive. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, it makes sense to like pay attention to it just in the sense that like, you know, they're massive in terms of like streaming. So, you know, like there's going to be someone out there that's going to want to be able to stream to it. That just ain't me, you know? I mean, I don't even have a Facebook account. I don't have an Instagram or anything like that. I don't like the company at all. I want nothing to do with them. But just in general, like AV1 is impressive, but I think by the time it becomes relevant, NVIDIA is going to support it on all their GPUs. AMD is going to support it on all their GPUs, and Intel is going to have it on their integrated graphics. And once it hits the integrated graphics, that's where like I think it matters. Because that means that you could have, you know, you're not going to lose a PCIe slot. I don't think Elon's buying NVIDIA. He's buying Twitter. Yeah, like he's buying Twitter, and like who knows how that's going to go, because like I don't think that that's going to be an overall good move. But who knows? I mean, for one thing, I think it's just going to be funnier overall to see the memes. I like Twitch. I watch a lot of Twitch, but I hate the company so much. Like, it is one of the most embarrassingly mismanaged companies I have ever seen. Where, like, one person could do a minor offense, get banned 30 days. Another person could just straight up, like, show porn on screen and get like a 7-day ban. Like, it is so inconsistent. Yeah, I mean, like, Twitch is imploding right now just because, like, their moderation is ridiculous. I mean, it really is. Like, the inconsistency with their bans already pisses off a lot of people. Because even if you yourself have not been banned, someone that you watch has been banned, someone that you watch, like, their friends have been banned for ridiculous reasons. It's such an insular community that everybody knows each other. So when somebody gets banned for a dumb reason, everybody knows about it. I mean, toxicity is huge pretty much everywhere, but I think that Twitch's moderation team just does not do anything to fix it, because overall there's a reason that there's so much toxicity. People get angry, people want to lash out because they get no answers about anything. And then, of course, the whole revenue split that they're doing, that's crazy to me, that, like, after losing some of their biggest streamers to YouTube, their move was, by the way, for the people that have stayed, we're taking more of your money. That's crazy to me. Like, there's certain aspects of Twitch that I do like. Like, right now, I couldn't start watching this Linus video here without YouTube starting to, like, you know, whine at me. You know, they're gonna, like, give me a little warning. They're gonna remove my videos from, like, people's recommendations until I stop watching copyrighted material. And I would like to be able to do, like, React content, you know, because, like, I can't get my hands on hardware like this, but we could watch a video on it and I could tell you my thoughts based off of the numbers that we see on there. But I can't watch the actual video along with you on YouTube because YouTube will murder me. So I like that aspect of Twitch, but then Twitch just has all of these other ridiculous things going on. It's just, like, in terms of the ranking of streaming sites, I think Twitch is number one just in terms of the content, but their moderation team is awful. Then second place is YouTube, just because, like, their video player is great. Their streaming, like, actual streaming software and everything, like, the back end of it is actually really, really nice. But the discoverability is a little crazy just because of the fact that it's completely based off of recommendations. And then Facebook is the worst because it's Facebook. Who watches Facebook streams? I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. But I mean, if they supported AV1 encoding, that would be really, really impressive, you know? I mean, like, it would at least get me to pay a little bit of attention to Facebook, you know? Just a little bit. Not enough to, like, watch, not enough to switch, not enough to start posting content there, but, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't think it was because of Facebook that Mixer shut down. I think that the reason that Mixer shut down specifically was because Microsoft realized that it was going to be way more expensive to compete than they had originally anticipated. But I do think that what ended up happening was that Microsoft made a deal with Facebook where, like, their, like, streamers could just, like, migrate over there. But I don't think, like, Facebook bought out anything or, like, you know, did anything really like that. I think it was a Microsoft decision. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that's how that ended up going. But it was pretty much just because, like, it was going to be really expensive to compete. Yeah, that's pretty much what ended up happening. Like, they kind of just, like, migrated any, like, partners that they had over to Facebook if they wanted to, but obviously they were released from their contracts. It's why Ninja didn't move over to, like, Facebook. He just came back to Twitch. Oh, the reason EVGA pretty much stopped making NVIDIA GPUs and GPUs in general was because of the fact that there was no margin for them. Because what ends up happening, because, like, the whole model with like AIBs is kind of weird in the sense that NVIDIA makes the chips, right? Like, they make the chip itself that goes on the board, but they don't make the actual board or anything like that. They will just sell the chips to companies like Asus, to EVGA and stuff like that. And what they do is they design the board and they actually put the chips on there and, you know, just like sell you the actual card. And what was happening was that NVIDIA was selling the cards, or like rather the chips themselves, for practically the price of the full card. So the margins were really, really low. That means that for like a company like EVGA, they were spending practically the whole cost of the card just to buy the chip that they would then put on the graphics card that they would have to sell at an even higher price than MSRP because they had to make at least some profit off of it. Compounded with the fact that what ended up happening is that NVIDIA started selling their own cards directly, the Founders Edition cards. They were now directly competing with their AIB partners. And in that situation, if you're a company like EVGA, how do you compete with them? Because NVIDIA sets the MSRP, let's say, of $1,600. So that for NVIDIA also includes the cost of their, their cooler and all of that. But to you as a company, they're practically selling you the chip for that price. Let's say they sell it to you for $1,500. Now you have $100 left over to hit MSRP, and you have to use those $100 to design the board and the cooler itself. And you still have to make a profit, so you can't even sell it at the $1,600 price point. You have to sell it at $1,700 or $1,800 or $1,900. Meanwhile, NVIDIA is selling their card at $1,600. So it's one of those things where it became a pretty rough situation where EVGA just couldn't compete anymore, and especially because NVIDIA wasn't telling them anything. Like, they kind of just became so secretive that they would not tell their partners anything about price, about, power numbers and stuff like that until like pretty much the month of the actual launch of the cards. So the AIBs had to essentially design their coolers and design their cards based off of just guesses more than anything else because they had no concrete information. Yeah, I mean, the size of all of the 4090s alone is just ridiculous. Like, it's funny to think that a lot of cases can't even fit them because they're so massive. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, I think that Microsoft having like a way of directly streaming to YouTube from their Xbox, like, I think they do actually have a feature where you can like stream directly like that. But I think that they should give you like, there needs to be like an OBS type of program for the Xbox. You know what I mean? One where you can actually control your settings and adjust things properly, set, bitrate and stuff like that. Especially because here's the thing. They actually have, AMD graphics cards that are in the consoles and stuff like that. They have the built-in encoders. They could do it. They could let you use the hardware accelerated encoding in there and actually let you stream if they enabled that feature properly. It would be cool to have like an OBS equivalent for consoles. Yeah, like the size of the 4090 is just like, it's a deadly weapon. Like, you drop that on your foot, there's a chance you're gonna break your foot. Like, those things are monstrous. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen any pictures of like the 4090 on an RTX board, but it's like it's like the tiniest little thing. Like, let me see if I can find that. Yeah, I mean, I really would like to actually see an OBS type of thing on consoles, because consoles are just becoming more and more like actual PCs. Look. A 4090 on a RTX board. It's ridiculous. It is actually ridiculous. Like, you could, like, this is pretty much the size of a whole PC. Like, this is a meme. This really is just a meme. It's so funny to think that this is the state of the PC industry right now. It's ridiculous. It really is. Yeah, I mean, like, it could legitimately break a PCIe slot, Like, it actually could. Like, they legitimately need the brace for them because they're so huge. You actually just have a brick on there. Like, it's just ridiculous because, like, you have multiple pounds of just raw metal on that graphics card cooling it. Like, it's just ridiculous. There is a market out there, though, I think now, of making like custom like support brackets and stuff like that. Like, I think it would be kind of cool to have a support bracket that's like a little figure person that's like holding up the graphics card and stuff like that. Like, I've seen people do that with like making like little Lego figures and stuff like that, and it's actually pretty cool. But before, support braces were more kind of like a almost like a way of like a manufacturer being like, oh, look at how big our graphics card is, but they weren't really necessary. This time around, they're kind of necessary, you know? They're so huge that like the sag is gonna be real. Like, it's just gonna be ridiculous. But this is straight up a meme. And it kind of sucks because I like ITX systems. I really, really do. But like I do think that like ITX systems are super cool, being able to make as small of a system as possible with a crazy amount of performance. But these cards don't let you make ITX systems anymore, you know? Like, I mean, just like look at this thing compared to his hand, compared to his arm. Yeah, like the Desk Mini. I love the Desk Mini. I wish I could have gotten one. I never ended up actually buying one. I really wish I did. Because like, I think a Desk Mini with something like the what's it called, the 5600G would be like the coolest thing ever. Yeah, exactly. That is the best possible setup with the Desk Mini. That's like my dream system right there. I love that, especially because using the Wraith Stealth, because I actually like the Wraith Stealth cooler. I really do. Like, it does the job. It does the job. You don't even need to buy a cooler. Like, I mean, I also like the what's it called, the Noctua like ITX cooler. I forgot the name of it. It's like, I think the L9A for the AMD one. Like that specific one, I love it. I love that cooler, but like the Wraith Stealth pretty much does the job. It really does. I just like the Noctua one because it feels nice, it looks nice, and I like Noctua as a company because they really support their products a lot. But the Wraith Stealth is just so good. It really is. Oh, you played wait. So you did you emulate the PlayStation 3 on it then? Like was it able to actually handle the emulation for that perfectly fine? Because I actually have not looked into PlayStation 3 emulation in a while. Yeah, because I'm very curious how the next generation of APUs with the 7000 series are actually going to do with the PlayStation 3. Because I know that the PlayStation 3 really benefits from AVX 512. It has like, you know, like some pretty massive improvements. I've seen the benchmark numbers for that. And the fact that, you know, AMD now has AVX 512 built into their CPUs, I'm curious how that's actually going to do with their integrated graphics for their actual full-on iGPUs. Because like all of their CPUs at this point have integrated graphics, but it's just like 2 compute units, so they're nothing really that impressive. Yeah, I mean, I really hope that their APUs have AVX 512. Part of me feels like they might go down the route of just cutting that out for the APUs. But if they do that, I'm going to be so sad. I'm going to be so sad because I think that they have an opportunity here to do something really impressive. But I don't know if they're actually going to be willing to do that. You know what I mean? Like, the 7000 series from AMD really is showing me that they kind of just are going down a weird route of really starting to segment their stuff. And like, I hope that they don't start to cut out features like that. AVX 512 is just too impressive of a feature to really like cut out like that, you know? Yeah, I mean, like, I really hope that we get to see some more Ryzen 7 APUs in particular. Because like, so far, Ryzen 7 on APUs hasn't really been that impressive, you know? Because like, yeah, you get like what, one more compute unit on the iGPU. Didn't really translate to that much more performance. in general. It wasn't anything substantial, but it's still, it's a nice feature to have, having the more cores, especially if you wanted to make like really tiny like productivity systems, if you wanted to do things like video editing and stuff like that. You know, the like the Ryzen 7 APUs. But you throw RDNA 2 on that, throw RDNA 2, and you throw AVX 512, you now have an emulation monster. Like, it would be so impressive. So impressive. Yeah, like I get that AVX 512 wouldn't be the most important thing. Already having the better iGPU would be an improvement. But in general, you throw AVX 512 and pretty much PlayStation 3 emulation is just going to be ridiculous. Like, you could at that point essentially have a mini console. You know, you'd like take something the size of the desk mini. You will now have a mini emulation console that could do pretty much every console you could want it to, all the way up to like a PlayStation 3. Like, that's crazy to think about, that like a tiny little box is going to be able to emulate up to a PlayStation 3 really, really well. It's going to be sipping power, because I remember having a PlayStation 3 and that thing would just spit out heat, dude. It would just spit out heat. Which emulator is the Yuzu one? Is that the Switch? I can't remember which one Yuzu is. Or is that the Xbox one? No, that's the Switch, right? Yeah, that's the Switch. I actually have not looked at all into Switch emulation. I like, because, you know, emulation for like currently existing consoles is one of those things where it's like, it's rough in general. How is Xenia, by the way? Because like, the Xbox 360 is one of those consoles that I really want emulation to exist for, just because like there are a lot of games on the Xbox 360 that I would love to be able to play that they still have not released on PC. How is it that we don't have Gears of War 3 on PC? Like, that blows my mind. And we don't have Red Dead Redemption on PC either. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, it sucks. Like, there's a lot of games from my childhood that I would love to play, but I don't have a 360 anymore, and like, I don't really feel like going on eBay and buying one for like, you know, $80 and then just like finding the games on sale. Really? Deadly Premonitions is on PC though, so there's at least that. But obviously it would be nice to be able to like have the emulated versions and stuff like that. Honestly, I think in terms of emulation, Dolphin has spoiled us, man. It really has. Like, Dolphin is just such an impressive emulator that it makes everything just like, it flexes on everybody, you know? And it's not to say that it's the only emulator that's good. There's a lot of good emulators out there, but Dolphin is just so impressive. Really. I thought that there was like a fan patch on PC that actually made Deadly Premonitions better, but I'm not sure on that. Yeah, honestly, Dolphin is literally perfection when it comes to emulation. Like, it really is. Like, it's crazy how good it is compared to like even other ones that have been around for a long time. Like, PPSSPP has been around for a long time. PCSX2 has been around for a long time. And like, they're good emulators, but they're nowhere near the same as Dolphin. Like, Dolphin feels like an actual, like an actual full production piece of software. Yeah, I mean, I guess that there is only so much that you can patch in a game when you don't have access to the source code, so that makes sense. See, that's why I wish emulation had, like, you know, more support. Like, I wish developers would kind of just like be open to like letting emulation software exist. I do wonder when that will happen. Like, you know what's crazy to me? How long it's taken for like Xbox emulation to even become a thing. You know? Like, the Xbox has taken forever to actually get some decent emulators for it, you know? Because like at this point, like it's a console that's like 20 years old. It's like as old as me practically, and like you you just don't have really like robust emulation for it. Yeah, I wonder why that is. I wonder, like I've never looked into like Xbox emulation because honestly, I wasn't a huge user of the original Xbox. I only ever played like Halo on it, but it like it almost seemed crazy to me that like for how big Halo is as a franchise, for it to just never get like as wide of adoption in terms of like proper development. Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to like look into that. Like I've delved in a little bit when it comes to like emulation and stuff like that, but I've never been like super hard into it. Just because like a lot of the times it's just difficult to find ROMs and stuff like that, and like, you know, like a lot of the times you got to like mess around with things just to like get things set up. And once you have it all up and running, it's perfectly fine. But in general, it's just one of those things where it's like I'm at the point now in my life where if I want to play a game, I just want to be able to jump in and play it immediately. I don't want to have to deal with any like extra stuff or anything like that. You know, like setup and stuff like that. It's just one of those things where it's like it just takes up a lot more time, you know? Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's probably easy to get like the ROMs for the OG Xbox, especially because it doesn't have exactly a lot of games that I want to play anyway. So probably getting all of the ones that I would want would probably be pretty easy. It's just about putting the time for it. But I do want to get like a huge collection of ROMs and kind of just like have them on like a NAS with like a backup so I never lose them. Just to just have them, you know, because like that's all I gotta do, you know. Does the Internet Archive actually just have like all of the ROMs on there? Because like that's actually crazy to me. Like how are they allowed to do that? I'm not to say that it's a bad thing. I think that that's awesome. I think game preservation is like an important thing because games are art. They really are. They are just they're pieces of art. They deserve to be preserved just like any other piece of art deserves to be preserved. Like it annoys me when companies start to like take down stuff like that, you know? That's actually super impressive that somebody did like a huge ROM backup like that. That's so cool. Like it's so cool, and I think it's a necessary thing, honestly, especially with how game companies are nowadays, where they will just take down games and just like have them cease to exist. Like I think that that's like that's a really really cool and important thing that needs to be done. Man, we went on a tangent. We're like on emulators right now. We were like talking about like ARC GPUs and stuff like that. But yeah, just in general, back to the ARC GPUs. I think that ARC is right now in a rough state. I think that the most interesting thing that Intel has on their roadmap right now is more than likely just the 13th gen GPUs or CPUs rather. Their 13th gen CPUs are like the most interesting thing to me. Once all the AV1 stuff gets added onto there, I want Intel though to bring back AVX 512 on the consumer side of things. Because like we got onto the topic of AVX 512, and I do think that the AVX 512, at least when it comes to like emulation and stuff like that, it has proven to me that it has value. Because I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Hey, what's up? I wasn't the biggest fan of AVX 512 at first, just because it does take up a lot of die space. But seeing what it does with PlayStation emulation and stuff like that, and seeing what the potential is for emulators in general, actually has me on board. I want it on everything. I want AVX 512 to become standard. I want it to just be on everything. And I'm hoping that Intel actually ends up bringing it back. And I do hope that Intel actually continues to make more generations of GPUs, because I think that ARC is like a learning experience. You know what I mean? Like they're getting into a new market. They are obviously going to have some rough patches here and there, but it's about, building the foundation for them to be able to expand off of that. And I think Arc is a good foundation. They have good software support when it comes to programs that matter. And they have good support when it comes to just having a large engineering team that can actually get products out the door. It's something that a lot of companies just don't have. They just need to fix all of the problems that they have. They need, a driver team that is actually able to execute properly. And they just need to actually be able to get these products into people's hands. So they got to be competitive with price. And they're doing that right now, honestly. Because like the A770, in terms of price, pretty impressive. The fact that the driver issues hold it back though and make the A750 comparable to it. I think an A750 in terms of price is actually pretty reasonable. I just wish they would fix all the driver issues. Yeah, 11th gen still has AVX 512, but Alder Lake doesn't have it, and I don't think Rocket Lake is going to end up having it either. I don't think 13th gen is going to have AVX 512. Let me check. At least from like what we've seen, like leaks, I don't think that they have 512 back. Yeah, I think the A750 is a pretty decent start. I would hope that they can actually fix these issues, because the fact that these driver issues have been taking this long makes me genuinely believe that there might be a fundamental hardware flaw here. Yeah, like that's pretty much like the approach that I see. Like the more competition that we have, it's only going to incentivize these companies to be more competitive in terms of performance, in price, and we win as customers. Because like screw all that fanboy stuff, you know what I mean? Like screw all the fanboy mentality. I don't care about Intel as a company. I don't care about NVIDIA as a company. And I don't care about AMD as a company. They are out to get my money just like any other company. They are not my friends. So what matters the most is that we get the best product that we can for our money. All of these companies want our money. So if they want our money, they need to give us the best product possible for the best price. I have no loyalty to any company. My loyalty is to the best performance per dollar. Right now, as it stands, I think that for the last year, or for the last 2 years, it was better to get a gaming laptop than a desktop. But I think things have started to turn a bit, and now either option is viable. Like, I think you could, like, it really just depends on what you want. Do you want like a full dedicated PC that it's not going to be moved? You just have the system there, because the thing about a gaming laptop is that no matter what, it's going to produce more noise because it just has less room for cooling. Yeah, exactly. Price to performance is what matters the most. If Intel is going to give me that, I'm going to go Intel. If AMD is going to give me that, I'm going to go in AMD. If NVIDIA is going to give me that, I'm going to go at NVIDIA. It really does not matter to me. I'm in it to get the most performance per dollar for myself. I'm not looking to increase the profit numbers of these companies. They're not my friends. I don't own stock in any of them, at least not directly. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't care. For me, it's about getting the most performance for me. And obviously, I want better products for all of us. But yeah, back to the whole gaming laptop versus gaming PC. I think that in general, it just depends on what you want. If you want a gaming system that you can take with you, gaming laptop is the way to go. If you want something stationary that is going to produce less noise, then a gaming PC is pretty much the way to go. But you're right now, we're in a position where neither one is a bad option, really. Like, I like gaming laptops. I really do. Specifically, Lenovo makes some really nice gaming laptops. I'm a huge fan of their Legion series. Hey there, Ad. Yeah, pretty much. Like, getting better performance for the least amount of money possible is the way to go. And obviously, you should have a price point for yourself, Like, if your budget is like $300 to $400 for a graphics card, doesn't matter who has the best graphics card on the market. That's not the price point you're looking at. It's about what is the best in your price range. So if that's from AMD, if that's from NVIDIA, or if that's from Intel, you go with that option, whichever one is the best one for you. Like, I wish that more people could just like move away from that fanboy mentality, because people will buy from one company and that becomes just the company that they always buy from, you know? And that's not really a good approach. It's just about getting the best thing that you can get for the dollar, you know? Because like, it doesn't matter if one company has a better product if they're going to charge more money, you know? And like, it's to the point where you're spending more per dollar for that performance. Yeah, I agree. The RTX 4090 is just way too expensive. It's way, way, way too expensive. You know, like the numbers that we've seen, they all show that it's just not worth getting. It's just not. I mean, the price point of it is just insane. $1,600 over already a $1,200 3090 Ti. Is there anything specifically that you want? Like, because getting a MacBook is completely different than getting a gaming laptop. You know, a Titan V. Yeah, like the Titan cards are a whole different beast. They're not gaming cards really. They're meant to be more productivity, but it's weird because the last time we actually got a full good like Titan card was just the first generation of Titans, because those were actually just Quadros with a different name. Then NVIDIA realized that they'd released the greatest graphics card ever made, and then like the Titan brand kind of just became like a weird pseudo productivity card that was mostly a gaming card, so it was still missing a lot of the features that you would want from a professional card. So just in general, like, they got rid of the Titan name because what a 4090 is essentially what a Titan was for like the longest time. It's just a gaming card that was just really expensive and had more VRAM, and that was about it. But yeah, like if you're thinking about getting a gaming laptop or a MacBook, you got to ask yourself what you want to do, because you're not going to be gaming on a MacBook. You know, like a good game, like if you want like an actual gaming system, then obviously a gaming laptop is the way to go. But if you just want a laptop that is just going to be super power efficient, not going to make any noise whatsoever, and it's going to last you pretty much all of today and tomorrow in terms of use, you get a MacBook. I actually really like the M1 MacBooks. The M1 and the M2 MacBooks, I really actually like a lot. I would get one if I actually needed a portable laptop like that. Now, if you're not going to be gaming and stuff like that, I would honestly like, because I don't know what programs you're going to be using, and I don't know if they actually have like Mac versions of them that actually work with the M1 or the M2, like with the ARM CPUs. So I would look into that specifically. But if you're not going to be gaming, I would lean towards MacBook 100%. And yeah, I agree. Titan is just a badass name. Like I think that like when they first launched, because I mean I've been like in the PC like space for long enough that I remember when they first announced the Titan cards, that was one of the most hype reveals, where they were just like the GTX Titan. That was just like, whoa, especially when you saw the specs of it, because you got the full fat die at the time, you know? Because what NVIDIA does is they have, you know, specific chips that they make, and they just give you like cut down versions of them like as you go lower down the stack. And so what ended up pretty much happening is that they ended up actually getting the full die, the full chip die, putting it on the Titan and selling that to you, you know? I think that, yeah, the hardware industry in general has hit a point of stagnation, and you can see it because power consumption numbers are the highest that they've ever been. And the performance gains that we're seeing are almost completely based off of the fact that we are getting like increases in power more than anything else. Like architectural improvements aren't seeing as big a gains as we would like them to see. We've hit a point of diminishing returns. So companies like have to raise power targets because everyone's done it at this point. Like NVIDIA is not the only one that has raised the amount of power that their hardware is using. They've done it the most, but they're not the only ones that have done it. If you look at AMD's CPUs over the last 3 generations, they have been using more and more and more power. Same with Intel. They have been using more and more and more power. Now, they are efficient. They are pretty efficient, but to stay competitive with each other, they are all cranking their power numbers as much as they can. So out of the box, they are just chugging down power like crazy. So essentially that's the situation that we're in right now, where we have hit a point of stagnation, of diminishing returns, and especially because a lot of these companies have made some ridiculous amounts of money. Yeah, they have 65-watt options, but in general, like they're not really focusing on efficiency, especially on the desktop side, as much as before. So they're really going down the route of like, if you want to see the biggest gains, you have to crank up that power. You can, of course, drop down like because one of the best things about CPUs nowadays is that you can actually adjust their power targets and stuff like that and keep most of the performance gains, but you are losing a little bit of performance. And that's a part of, like, it's the nature of the beast, where, each node increase that we get, or rather node reduction, going down from 7 nanometers down to 5 nanometers and then eventually down to 3, we're getting less and less actual gains with each one. So these companies need to figure out other ways to squeeze out more performance, and one of the easiest ways is to just raise the power. So it is one of those things where we're reaching a point of diminishing returns, and it's going to be rough for a lot of companies to really continue to be competitive. It actually is pretty high. I mean, I saw Gamers Nexus's video and I saw Hardware Unbox's video on it, and like the power numbers that they have, like they aren't as huge as like what the leaks were saying. Because I mean, some of the leaks were ridiculous, being like the RTX 4090 is going to use 600 watts or it's going to use 800 watts and stuff like that. It's not like that at all. It's almost about as power hungry as like the 3090 Ti is, but the thing is that the 3090 Ti was already a power hungry monster, especially like the AIB ones, like the ones from like companies like EVGA and MSI and stuff like that already had increased power targets. They were eating up a lot of power. They really were. And like the fact that the 4090, because the 4090 reviews that we've seen so far, those are just founders editions. Those are to spec, already eating up like over 500 watts of power. The AIB models are more than likely going to end up eating up even more power than that. So the 4090 is not exactly an efficient machine. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. Like the customers at this point for the RTX 4090 are really people who are professionals that will actually make money off of it. If you're a gamer and you're just looking to buy one of those, you have to have a lot of disposable income. You really do. Like gaming has to be the only thing that you do. Like this is like it's your entire life. Like it's just one of those things where like the RTX 4090, in terms of price, it's just crazy to me. Like I would honestly rather buy right now, if I was on the market for a GPU, I would probably buy a 6800 XT today. I'd pay the $600 for it and be happy. Because we got to ask ourselves, really, what games are we playing? Like, are you guys playing any games that really require that increased performance? Like, show of hands, honestly, how many of you guys are gaming at 4K? Like, are any of you guys gaming at 4K? High refresh rate 4K or anything like that? Yeah, see, like if you're like gaming, like if you're emulating and stuff like that, you don't need a monster of a GPU, Yeah, see, 1080p, like if you're at 1080p, something like the 4090 is not for you, you would be happy with like something way lower than that, you know? Like already like a 3060 would pretty much handle all of that for you perfectly fine, you know? And 1080p is still the most common like resolution that people are gaming at. So I don't see a reason for the 4090 for 99% of people on the market unless you're doing machine learning stuff, if you're doing rendering work and stuff like that. If you need it for your job, for you to get paid and earn money, I get it. I completely get it. But if you're just looking to game, why are you doing this? You know, why are you buying it? I don't see the reason for it, you know? Like, I think that there are plenty of other products out there. Like, right now, I would say that probably my favorite GPU is the AMD 6600. The 6600, because, like, if you just go on, like, let me see. You go on, like, Amazon, and you just look up the RX 6600, at least here in the US, boom, 230 gets you a GPU that will handle most games at 1080p. It's not going to be producing so much heat that you could actually heat your house in the winter with it. It's not going to trip your breaker or anything like that. It's just going to let you game. And at 1080p, this thing does really well. You know, like, I like efficient cards. I really do. I like me some low power cards that get you the performance that you need, you know? Yeah, like, if you're on the RTX 20 series, there's no reason to upgrade at all. There's literally no reason to upgrade whatsoever. Like, you're chilling, honestly. If you're on RTX, like, 20 series, you're chilling. No reason whatsoever to, like, upgrade. No reason to move on. You know? Like, this right here, like, if you're a budget buyer, this is what I would get and just be done with it. I wouldn't even look at, like, gaming performance on graphics cards until, like, you're playing a game where you actually start to notice the performance hit. Because, like, I mean, if I'm being honest, I kind of regret buying an RTX 3070 Ti. Not because I wanted to get a newer card, but because it kind of wasn't necessary, really. You know, I game at 1440p, but the games that I play aren't that necessary, you know? Like that level of performance just isn't necessary. Like, for the past, like, couple of months, I have mostly just been playing Fortnite and Valorant. And that's it. I don't need that level of performance out of an RTX 3070 Ti. Like, it's literally just overkill for what I play. So, like, this right here, this would handle what I play no problem. Like, this would have been enough. Now, obviously, there was no reason for me to get this because before I got the 3070 Ti, I had like it was like a 2070 Super. So already that was handling everything perfectly fine. The only reason I upgraded was because I actually managed to sell that 2070 Super for more than what I paid for the RTX 2070 or the 3070 Ti. Because, like, I managed to sell the card during, like, you know, when, like, GPU prices were just about to start coming down. Because, like, I saw that the Ethereum merge was coming, that, like, you know, mining was going to die, so I managed to sell the card before all of that ended up happening. I have an Iris Xe laptop and my PC has a... Oh, God. I love the GTX 1650. The 1650 Ti... I love that thing, honestly. I actually have one of those in a Unraid machine, and it's what I use for the encoding on a Plex server, pretty much. Like, it handles all the video transcoding that I need. It's so power efficient. It's overkill, literally, for what I have it, you know? Yeah, the RX 6600 is better than the RTX 3050, and like it's pretty much like same price point. NVIDIA is literally just charging more for the RTX 3050 because people don't know any better. Like, it's actually crazy that they can get away with that. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy that they can just get away with just charging those kinds of prices, but that's just what they do. They can do it. It blows my mind, really. But they're able to do it, you know? And it's just like, it's just crazy to me. It really is. It really is crazy to me how much mind share NVIDIA has that they can, like, charge the kind of prices that they do. You know? See, I've gamed at 4K and I don't think it's worth it. Cause like, I mean, I don't want to have like a 50-inch monitor. You know? Like I don't think a 50-inch monitor is like worth having, and you're not going to notice a difference between 1440p and 4K at something that's like 27 inches or 32 inches, which I think are the most ideal sizes for a gaming monitor. Eva, do you think an i7 11700F is still worth buying? Oh yeah, honestly, like what GPU do you have? Because I can almost guarantee you that for whatever GPU that you have, unless you have something really, really high end, it's just like you're not going to notice any difference in terms of performance, and you get that AVX 512. Like, I think I would look for a used i7 and like go based off of like that. You know, like get a used i7. If you could find a used motherboard along with it, I would probably pick that up and just roll with that, you know? Because like honestly, AVX 512, especially because you play like emulators and stuff like that, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. You're picking up an RX 640, yeah, then pretty much, yeah. I mean, realistically though, I wouldn't go for that GPU. Like, yeah, I get it. You probably don't need a lot of GPU performance, but I would really just try to get the 6600. Really, honestly. Like, I get it. It might just be overkill for what you want to do and stuff like that, but I'm thinking about it also in terms of resale value. You know what I mean? Because maybe later down the line, you're going to want to get something a little bit better. And like, I think a 6600 is going to hold its value more because it's going to have like some better features, you know? Yeah, I mean, I've been using AMD products now for a while. Like, I actually had a, what's it called? What was it called? Like, I had one of their older, like back when their CPUs were complete shit. I had a, what was it? Like an 8350. Like that was just like a secondary PC that I had. Like my main PC had a 2600, like an i7 2600. But AMD CPUs back then were so terrible. So terrible, but they were cheap. They were cheap. Like I had that for a while. That was pretty bad. I was using Intel for pretty much most of my life until Ryzen came out, and I got first gen Ryzen, and since then I have just been on AMD. At this point though, I would probably switch back to Intel if I were on the market for a new CPU, just out of pure price point. But I mean, in terms of like companies, I have no loyalty to anybody. Like I would never say I love NVIDIA, I love AMD, I love Intel, because like they're companies, you know what I mean? All they do is sell products to me. I have no loyalty to any of them whatsoever. I would just go with whoever has the best price to performance at my price point. Because like, I mean, like these companies, they'll screw you over if they can, and they do. That's what NVIDIA is doing. They're screwing us over in terms of like the 4000 series. You know, and like AMD followed suit when their 6000 series happened. You know, like NVIDIA has been creeping up prices now for like 3 generations, and AMD has just been following them along with it. So no one's a good guy here. They're just companies. Really, 4 gigabytes of RAM only? That's kind of crazy. I do like Intel's Pentiums though. Oh my god, speaking of Pentiums, completely unrelated to what we were talking about, I was actually just gonna go into this meta thread that shows the performance numbers of like the arcs, but that reminds me. Intel renamed their Pentium processors. They pretty much got rid of like the Pentium and the Celeron branding. And I hate this. I hate this so much. They are now just renaming their Pentium and Celeron CPUs to Intel processor. That is ridiculous to me. Because people know what Pentiums are, they know what Celerons are. I get it. They have a bit of a stigma because people see Pentium, they see Celeron now, they think, well, like, wow, that's super low end. But guess what? Your mom and dad or your grandma don't care. They just want something that works, you know? Yeah, the Core 2 Duos honestly still hold up if you just want to do like web browsing and stuff like that. Like video playback, they struggle with just because they don't have like a built-in encoder or anything like that, but or rather a built-in decoder. But if you're just browsing the web, just looking at Reddit, looking at like stuff like that, they do perfectly fine. Especially you install Linux on a system with that, you're perfectly fine. But yeah, like Intel getting rid of the Pentium and Celeron names for their low-end systems is ridiculous to me, man. Really, really ridiculous. Because now they're just they just say Intel processor, so it's gonna be like just like the Intel G whatever or any and stuff like that. And it's dumb. I think it's dumb because people know what a Pentium is, people know what a Celeron is. Just putting Intel processor, all it's gonna do is hurt their brand. Because people are gonna see Intel processor, they're gonna get, you know, like a cheap laptop with it. They're gonna like use it, and they're just gonna think, oh, I guess Intel processors just aren't that good. They're just cheap. And it's not to say that for the vast majority of people, Pentiums and Celerons are bad, but they're not fast. They're not snappy. Like, because the average consumer doesn't know anything. You know what I mean? Like they don't know like naming or anything like that. So they see a laptop that just says Intel processor. They think, oh, okay, so it's like what, like an i7 or something, or like an i5. I know what an i5 is. I've seen commercials. And then they buy it and it's not as fast as like a MacBook with an M1. And then they're like, well, I guess Intel's just crap then. Like, branding is important. It really is. It's important to have like brand names. It's important to have a way for customers to distinguish things, you know? Like, it's crazy to me that they're just getting rid of Pentium and they're getting rid of Celeron just to go with generic Intel processor. That's crazy. Like, I hate this. I genuinely hate this as a move from them. I really think that they should probably just keep the branding. It's already so established. People know what it is, you know, like, and it because like for the average consumer, it takes them a while to actually learn things, you know, like when they first launched like the i5, i7, i3 naming scheme, people didn't know what it was. Now people know what it is for the most part, you know, like people know i7 means this is the fastest thing. Now that's not the case because Intel has released, you know, like i7 labeled CPUs that were just dual cores with hyperthreading, but it was the fastest ones within that category from them, you know? So there was at least some level of understanding there. You get rid of a name like Pentium and Celeron, which people already associate with like, you know, lower end budget stuff, and just go with a generic Intel processor name, and people are just going to be confused. They're just going to be confused. Yeah, like I can get that Pentium has been around long enough that people just kind of associated with like older products and stuff like that, but it wasn't just labeled Pentium. It would be like Pentium G, you know, or like what G39, or like what was one that they did? It was like the Pentium. What's the most recent ones? It's like G, yeah, like the G4400 and stuff like that. Like they would have like a generational number with them so that people could distinguish them, but Pentium was just letting you know the tier that it was in, you know? So like it's about having a consistent brand name like that. So the fact that they're getting rid of that and just going with a generic Intel processor name, now where does that fall on the stack? Like imagine you are just a normal person, you don't really know anything about computers, you're just looking to buy a laptop and you don't need like an expensive one, and it just says Intel processor. Well, what does that mean? Like what you don't know anything about that, you know? Like you could at least recognize like, oh, okay, Pentium or Celeron, that's like those are like, you know, like cheapo ones, you know, that's fine for me. I just need it for like, you know, office work and stuff like that. Like it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, that like pretty much that. It's just like your friend says, oh yeah, just get an Intel, and you just see Intel processor and you think, oh, okay, well this just looks like a great deal. You buy it and it might not be what you need for your hardware or for your level of, you know, performance that you need for the software that you're using or anything like that for your workload, essentially. Like having a consistent naming scheme helps a lot because people Google stuff. You know what I mean? Like you're looking to buy something and it's just like, okay, what's a Pentium? You look up Pentium and it's just like, you're going to see articles that are like, Pentiums are good if you're just doing office work, but if you're doing anything more intense, then obviously you're going to want something a little bit more powerful. So someone can get that information quickly. That's what it was like good for. It made it easy for people to figure out what they actually wanted to get. Now with just Intel processor, what are people going to do? They're just going to Google Intel processor and it's just going to like, what are you going to get? Like, okay, right now, we're just going to Google Intel processor. Wow, this is helpful. Yeah, this is definitely helping me here. Whoa, okay, we immediately get to like products here. Okay, an i9 12900. I guess that's just what the laptop has. Okay, I'll get that. Like it's terrible branding. It's so terrible. It's a bad marketing move. I don't understand how they honestly think that that's like a good move. Like it blew my mind when I was reading this because like here's the thing. Intel as a company for the past like decade and a half, really, I would even say 20 years, they have been a marketing powerhouse. Their marketing has been so good we don't even acknowledge how good it is anymore. Because you got to understand, it's impossible for a tech company to get normal people to understand technology, and Intel did it. You could ask almost any normie out there what an i7 is, what an i5 is, what an i3 is, and they'll tell you, oh, okay, that's kind of like the performance tiers of these different CPUs. They can't tell you the details about them. They don't know what makes an i7 different than an i5 or an i3, but they know i7 better, i5 middle, i3 low. And that is powerful, powerful marketing. And that took pretty much a decade and a half of them just constantly bombarding us with advertisement, you know, and like then giving us essentially product segmentation in a way that has been consistent now for pretty much a decade. You know, we're 12 generations of CPUs into a consistent naming scheme. And this spits in the face of that decade of marketing and of product segmentation. And for what? Yeah, like AMD still keeps the Athlon name to represent the low end tier, you know? And like it just keeps consistent marketing. Like, yeah, okay, Athlons used to be the high performance ones, then they got relegated for the lower tiers. Same thing happened with Celeron, same thing happened with Pentium, you know? Like, these are brand names that were already established, and at some point they end up on the lower tier. But as time goes on, people start to understand what these things are, you know? They get like a consistent, you know, a consistent way of viewing things. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, people will measure like performance for CPUs. Like, they'll just say like, "Oh, we got 4.2 gigahertz and stuff like that," but like that doesn't mean anything because it's like all about like generational stuff and stuff like that. Well, because like things like base and boost speeds and stuff like that are meaningless because it doesn't account for like generational improvements in terms of architecture and stuff like that. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like numbers like that aren't really necessary, which is why it's important to keep a consistent naming scheme because that's what normies can understand, you know? Because like I mean like the like a decade ago, I had, you know, an i7 2600 that had like a base clock of like I can't even remember what the base clock is, but it would boost up to 4 gigahertz. 4 gigahertz at the time compared to like a 4 gigahertz CPU today is not the same level of performance. 4 gigahertz CPU today is destroying that CPU from a decade ago, you know? Because obviously architectural and generational improvements are there. IPC improves. And you don't get that from just seeing 4.2 gigahertz on a spec sheet. It doesn't tell you anything, you know? So like this was just such a dumb move that I had to talk about it because it was just, this blows my mind. This blows my mind that a company that has had such good marketing throughout most of its existence is fumbling this bad. And I guess they just really don't care about the low end. But they sell a lot of these. There's a lot of Chromebooks and stuff like that that use Pentiums and Celerons, you know? Their marketing sucks nowadays. It really does. Because listen, I love their Tiger Lake CPUs. I really do. I do love the 1135G7 and the 1165G7 and stuff like that. But what the hell are those names? What the hell is an 1135G7? What kind of name is that? That is ridiculous. That is a ridiculous name because it is so different from all of their different like all of their naming schemes that they've had before. Because like I mean, I had a 6700K. They released a 7700K. Okay, that's the replacement for it. Then the 8700K came out. All right, that's the replacement for it. Then the 9700K came out. That's the replacement for it, you know? And then of course they released the i9 series, so we had the 9900K, then the 10 900K, 11 900K. But then out of nowhere, 1135G7. Like what is that? And then 12th gen comes out, and now they went back to a more normal naming scheme. So it's just like, what was 11th gen there? Like their naming scheme has just been all over the place. Like it's just it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Yeah, like their numbers have just been all over the place. Pretty much it just means nothing. It means nothing. 1169G7. They might as well have just released that. At least then it would be memorable. Yeah, the 1135G7 is a mobile variant, but even like then they've had a consistent naming scheme for their mobile CPUs that changed with 10th gen, and they kind of just kept it with 11th gen, but it kind of just came out of nowhere. Cuz like they had like a 10, I think they had a 1035 G something. It might have been like a G1. Yeah. Because they had switched to like this. Like I had actually a laptop that had an 1135 G1. And like they pretty much for the 10th gen switched their naming scheme to that. but like their names were just so weird because like they kept the same consistency that they've had before, you know, with like the H series and stuff like that, and like K's and stuff like that. But then they had these other mobile ones that were like the 1035 G1, 1035 G5, 1035 G7 that just came out of nowhere. Like that was so completely different than what they've had before that it was just like, what even is this? And they did the same thing with 11th gen, and then they reverted back with 12th gen because they realized, oh, this is a stupid naming scheme. Oh, really? It's that late for you? All right. Well, have a good night then. But yeah, like their naming scheme was definitely just all over the place. And I mean, AMD was doing pretty good. Yeah, good night. They were doing pretty good with their naming scheme, but really it kind of all ended up falling apart with the fact that now they're doing like intergenerational mixing, where you know you have like previous generation architecture mixed in with current generation hardware in the same product scheme and stuff like that. So even their stuff is confusing now, but it's nowhere near as bad as like Intel's can be. But yeah, just in general, I hate the naming scheme there. It's just ridiculous. But we'll take a look at Arc really, because Arc, I was really hoping for better performance at this point, really, because this was a really good thread here on Reddit that kind of just went in and summarized the numbers that we were getting from the different hardware reviewers at 1080p. You know, at 1080p, you could see here that in comparison to, wow, this is like really hard to see here. Is there a way to fix that? Okay, I'll highlight the names there so you can actually see them. But yeah, so pretty much what we're getting out of all of this is that the A750 is about the best thing you can get in the Arc series, because the A770, the performance gains just are not really that impressive. I don't think 10% performance uplift in the best case scenarios is worthwhile. It's really not. And the A750 kind of just ends up being essentially around the same level of performance as the RX 6600, and the 6600 doesn't have the same like driver issues. It performs pretty decently. You know, like you get really decent levels of performance here. You're not buying into a beta product essentially. So it's just like in general, it kind of just like really what this shows me more than anything is that the 6600 is worth getting over the 3060, because the 3060 is way more expensive, and you're looking at like what on average like pretty much like what 5% more FPS. Yeah, okay, you get like better RT performance, but are you doing RT really on a 3060? And this is at 1080p, by the way. Now moving on to 1440p. Well, okay, here you start to see, you know, like it starts to actually take a lead over the 6600. Thing is, it's not exactly the greatest card in terms of 1440p in general, but it's not bad. It's not bad for 1440p in a lot of games. So you could see at least here at 1440p somewhat of a reason to like get it over the 6600. The 3060, it's at such a price range that it's like not even worth considering. Its real competitor is the 6600 and the 6600 XT. Because the XT, that's where you really start to see that, like, you know, the numbers are kind of just pointed towards like the 6600 being more comparable to it. Again, you don't have the driver issues that on these two that you would with the 57 or with the A750. But in general, it's competitive enough. There's also, of course, 4K results, but who's going to be gaming at 4K on this, you know? Like, these aren't 4K cards. They just aren't. So this one's pretty irrelevant. RT performance is, of course, better on it than it is on, you know, AMD's side of things, but not by a huge margin. Not by a huge margin. Or rather, it is a pretty significant margin, but I mean, like, in terms of comparison to the 3060, it's not like that different at all. But again, no driver issues here. The biggest downside for the A750 is the driver issues themselves. So at least Intel has better RT performance than what AMD's rocking, but you're not going to be doing RT on this thing for the most part, really. So it's just really overall, I think that at the price points that we're looking at here, MSRP being $290 versus what you can get a 6600, because, like, I mean, it says the MSRP is $330, but we already looked at Amazon. You can get this thing for like $230. At $230, why are you looking at the A750 unless you really want AV1 encoding? Unless you really want AV1 encoding, or you're the kind of person that really, really likes to do, like, you like to do, like, essentially beta testing. Like, if for you, it's fun to try out games and see if they work or if they don't. I mean, that's kind of like the main reason I even started my channel. That's kind of what I like to do. I like to play games on systems and see if they would work and stuff like that. That was fun for me, you know, like that. It's something that I enjoyed. It was like a hobby and stuff like that. So for someone like me, getting an A750 actually is pretty worthwhile. But outside of that, if you're just looking to actually buy a GPU to actually game on, just get a 6600 or a 6600 XT. Because in general, you're going to get overall better performance or equal performance. You're not going to have to deal with those driver issues. It's going to be perfectly fine at 1080p, pretty much identical at 1080p. Only going to be slightly slower at 1440p, and you're not going to be playing it with RT anyway. Currently looking to buy a PC or a laptop. Well, okay, what is your price point there? Because if you feel like a 6 gigabytes of VRAM wasn't enough, then pretty much 8 gigabytes is minimum for you. And also, which Legion 5 Pro did you have, actually? Like, what GPU was that? Because, like, I'm trying to think, like, which one is like which GPU on mobile has 6 gigabytes of VRAM? Is that a 3060? Because, like, I know on like PC, like, the 3060 has like 12 gigabytes of RAM. I don't know if, like, pretty sure the mobile version has 6. Okay. Well, in terms of a laptop, you're pretty much just gonna have to get something with 3070 at the minimum. And, like, I love me some Legion 5s. Like, I love me a Legion 5 Pro. If you can get one with a 3070, then that's the way to go. But if you're building a desktop, if you're looking to build a desktop, you have way more options there. Because pretty much for the price point that you could get a Legion 5 Pro with like a 3070, you could pretty much pick yourself up a desktop with a 3070, or a desktop with a, you could even potentially squeeze in all the way up to something like a 16 or like a 6900 XT or 6800. 6800 gets you, like, the 6800 has 16 gigabytes of RAM. Because, like, if you're running into RAM limitations, it might just be like specific games that were giving you issues. Okay, so, well, what games are you looking to do ray tracing with, really? Because, like, in all honesty, like, I have a 30, or I have a 3070 Ti on my desktop. And I don't really play any games really that use RT. I mean, I played Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. I did love that. That actually looked really, really good with RT. I played Cyberpunk with ray tracing for a bit, but I ended up just turning it off because I liked the smoothness of having a high refresh rate over the RT graphics. Personally, it didn't impress me enough, really. So, like, what games is it that you're actually trying to like play there? Because like I think in general, really, you're probably better off going with something like a 3070. Oh, okay, Far Cry 6. Yeah, I would probably like I would piece together either a PC with a 3070 or a 3070 Ti, or look it for a laptop, because you can find some laptops that are pretty like discounted that actually have a 3070 in there. Since you want to actually use RT, I would avoid anything AMD. You're pretty much just like looking for a 3070. On desktop, I mean, like I would try to like see what you could actually like get. Like 3070 is probably going to be the sweet spot, because if you're looking to like get something like a Legion, more than likely you could piece together a PC that would perform better than that for the price point, pretty much. Probably won't be able to squeeze in like a 3080 or anything like that, but something like a 3070 Ti you could probably do. And a desktop 3070 Ti is going to perform better than a laptop with a 3070 Ti. Because remember, the laptop GPUs are cut down GPUs that are also thermal limited. So it's one of those things where they're not 100% comparable. When it comes to processor, it really genuinely does not matter. Like that, it's at a performance tier where you could go with either Intel or AMD. I would go with whichever is the cheapest. So if you can get like, because it depends on your region, obviously, but I would look into essentially like what's it called? The Intel. Because like Intel's about to launch their new generation. More than likely, it's probably just going to be like out of your price range more than likely, just because it's a new generation and all of that. But like 12th gen is just so good. Like I would pretty much like look into if you can get like an i5 yeah, like the i5 12400. Not necessarily, really. Like they're very comparative. I wouldn't really say like Intel is better or AMD, like the whole like AMD runs hotter thing is not really true. That really hasn't been true for a long time. But like right now, if I had to say which is my favorite CPU on the market right now, it is the i5 12400. You're pretty much like looking at, you know, like pretty much looking at 6 cores with hyper threading and all of that. It's gonna do good in pretty much every game that you're gonna throw at it. Like realistically speaking, like games just they don't require a lot of CPU performance. You know, you can't go wrong with this or with the Ryzen 5 5600 non-X. The non-X one is just cheaper overall. But yeah, the 5600 like their level of performance in games, especially if you have because the thing is if you're looking at CPU performance charts and stuff like that on YouTube, the people that are testing, they're using the most powerful GPU that they have. Because obviously, like they're doing a CPU comparison test, you know? But if you have something like a 3070, a 3070 Ti, a 3060, anything like that, you're not going to find a difference between these two in games at all. At all. Like there is going to be pretty much no measurable difference whatsoever, because you're going to be GPU limited before you're actually CPU limited. Like if you want to see how little like the numbers actually matter, look at a video that compares like an i3 versus like an i9. And you'll see that the i3 is super comparable to the i9. because like in general it really doesn't matter too much. Like people kind of overestimate how much CPU they actually need. You don't actually need a lot of CPU. You really don't. You really don't. So I would see how much can you get an i7 or an i5 12400 with a motherboard and RAM in your region, and then compare it to something like the Ryzen 5 5600. Piece it out together, see which one is like going to be the cheapest for you, and I would go with that. Like I promise you, you pair this with a 3060 or rather a 3070 Ti, you're not going to notice any difference in the level of performance that you're going to get is going to be perfectly fine. If you really want to go with like the best possible, the price increase is not worth it. It really isn't. It really isn't. Like in games, I promise you're not going to notice a difference. You're just going to be paying more money. Like you're really just going to be paying like more money just to get no measurable difference whatsoever. Like if you really want to go with something that is like the best that you could possibly get right now for the price, it's hard to like beat out the Ryzen 7 5800X3D. It's more expensive than these two, like pretty much like double the price, but we're talking about an 8-core 16 threads that has gaming performance that is comparable or better than like things like the 12th gen i9s and like even the 7000 series from AMD. So it's like if you just want something where it's just like this is going to be the best possible gaming performance that I can get without spending ridiculous amounts of money, this is it. But outside of that, if I was just going with like a budget option, these are the two I would go for. And I would probably just go with this because you could find motherboards for this that are pretty cheap, and this will at least let you upgrade to 13th gen. This is kind of a dead platform at this point. AM4 is pretty dead. But AM4 does let you upgrade to, you know, the 5800X3D. But if you buy this, I would not buy this later down the line or anything like that. This will let you upgrade to 13th gen. But, I mean, realistically, you could probably just buy this and game with this for years. You won't have to like worry about it at all. You're gonna be perfectly fine gaming with the i5 12400. Like it's pretty much like currently it's my favorite CPU. It really is. It's my favorite CPU that you can get on the market. But it just depends on like your specific region. But I would not look at anything like the 12600K. This is it. This is the way to go, because again, we're talking about like, unless you're going to be pairing it with something big, like a 3090 or like a 4090, you're not going to notice a difference. You're really not. So I would genuinely just go with this. This is the sweet spot for like 99% of people out there. You're going to be perfectly happy. I wouldn't even think about upgrading for this. You're going to be perfectly fine with this. Again, you can go with the 5600, but it's an older platform. This will at least let you get one more upgrade generation. This is dead. So, you know, just one of those things where I would kind of just lean towards the 12400. And another thing is, it does have like, if we're comparing it between the 12400 and 12400F, the F doesn't have the iGPU. I don't know what you like to do with your systems, but for me, once a system becomes old enough, I'll either pass it down to like family members or stuff like that. So I like to get the ones that have the iGPU in them, because once I'm done using this, I can just take out the graphics card. It still has the iGPU, and I can give this to like my parents to use, or like a cousin, or like anything like that. Someone that might just need an extra PC, or like who needs a PC just to be able to do schoolwork. And like you can use this without a graphics card. You know, this does not have a built-in graphics card, or rather a graphics chip. So you're going to have to throw in a graphics card to even use it. This with the built-in iGPU, you could just slap it onto a motherboard and immediately get video out. People can use it perfectly fine. I like to get them with the iGPU, because you really don't save a lot from going with the F series anyway. You get the iGPU, it makes troubleshooting stuff a lot easier. It lets you pass it down. And if you ever wanted to have like something like a Plex server or anything like that, where you want to do like, you know, actual like transcoding, because you're going to have multiple people using the system, these are super good for that. They really are. They're super, super good for that kind of thing. So it's just something to think about. Obviously, if you know you're never going to do anything like that, then get the F series. That's perfectly fine. But I like to get the ones with the iGPU. It just makes life a little bit easier. And it lets me just like pass these down to people so that they can just use, you know, like I have family members that are still using things. Like I have a family member actually that is still using a Core 2 quad as like their like daily PC. So it's like, you don't need a lot of performance. And like, if I gave this to my parents today, they probably will not need a new PC for like the next 10 to 15 years. So it's one of those things where it's like, it could be kind of nice to just get it with the iGPU and just like let somebody in the family use it. But really, it all just depends on you. But yeah, just in general, I feel like the next generation of products is kind of just like all over the place, you know? So, yeah, like, yeah, no problem. I'm pretty much going to be wrapping up the stream for right now. Kind of just like been going now for almost 4 hours. So I want to thank you guys for sitting here and watching. It's been really, really fun. I'll probably stream more consistently, but I just kind of wanted to talk about, you know, the launch of like the 4000 series for NVIDIA. We went into a little bit of the pricing for AMD's 7000 series, and we looked at some of the ARC stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I'll probably be streaming more consistently because it's pretty easy to do. So hope you enjoyed that. And I'll see you guys next time.